smarter man than I would probably use gloves, but I didn't. I forgot. That's okay. This stuff cleans up pretty good. We're gonna make an epoxy mold. These are made in various sizes and various materials, but we're gonna show you how we make them. And it's quite simple and reusable, which is the best part if you wanna make money or save money. So let's get started. Then we have plywood here. It's already pre-cut. I just grabbed some that we had, probably a little more expensive. Might wanna stick with like birch 3/4 inch or so. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut this down. I'm just gonna make a charcuterie board. I've got some pieces pre-cut. But this method, I'm doing like the miniature version. You can make a river table out of this, just, you know, imagine this as a larger scale. I'll also show you how to, say you have plywood and your piece is longer than the plywood you have. It comes in 8-foot sheets. You need 8.5, 9 feet, 12 feet. I will show you how to pocket hole the plywood together and then tape around it and yeah, make your own board extender. You're gonna need some clamps. We're gonna need some caulk. Here, we have some silicone, all-purpose, waterproof. Works great. Some Tyvek tape. If you don't know what that is, it's house wrap tape. Tyvek is like saying Kleenex, you know, for tissue. It's just a name brand. Lowe's carries it. They're not sponsoring us, but we use this and it seems to work great. If you can find a cheaper product out there that's a house wrap, go for it. Or you can purchase it from us, right, on our website. So house wrap tape, knife to cut it. We're using 1.25" Craigs. I think Craigs are great because Phillips head are just stupid. And also, we're gonna show you these cool little blocks. Yeah, so all these are just basic blocks of wood. I didn't even measure these. Oh, maybe I did. I think they're about 2 inches. Doesn't really matter, as long as they're about the same, because if you use a bar across your form to hold your pieces down on a larger scale, you want these to be the same height, like this, and then you clamp down on these sides. You don't want something smaller on one side than the other. Doesn't sit right, and it's... So this, what I was saying earlier about the extending your wood, we get to use the pocket hole jig. Comes in handy, it's really great. I'll show you how that works and how we get these pieces together. So I have pre-cut laurel here, I did before the filming, just because how to make a river table and all that stuff, and the epoxies, that's gonna be in a completely different video. I'm making a 20-inch by, let's say, 15-inch, 14-inch charcuterie board. So I cut my pieces slightly larger. Like lengthwise, I got 22. That's because of expansion and contraction. When the stuff heats up, there's movement. And also when it's all said and done, you take it out of your mold, you gotta flatten it and you gotta cut it to make sure all your lines, you got your 90 degrees, unless you're doing a faux live edge and all that fancy stuff. But always make it larger than what you're wanting to make. So that's where we're at with this. Now, knowing that I know the size of this, I will go ahead and cut up some plywood. All right, so here we go. I'm gonna measure out the size of the boards that I have, which are 22 by 16, I think. And that's what we're gonna do. So here's 22, 22. Safety glasses. Hey, thank you. I have the set, preset. I'm not gonna go into how track saws work. Figure it out. Or watch a video that we'll probably make. Now we have the bottom base of our box that we're going to put together. It's the dimensions slightly larger of the charcuterie board I'm gonna make. So now what we're gonna do is wrap it up. Pretty simple, pretty basic, pretty horrible noise. This is what your sheet of plywood should look like. Nice and covered, no big air bubbles, no air pockets, proper overlap on all the tape. What we'll do now is, out of the piece that I cut this off of, we're gonna cut little 4-inch strips of wood and cover those with Tyvek tape as well. I'm gonna cut them around 4 inches wide, which I think this is pretty close to. I'm using 4 because this is like just over 1 inch thick. If you're doing a table, typically you're gonna be around 2.5, 3 inches, somewhere around there with the thickness. If you use 4, it's universal. You know, like just because this is smaller going in here, I'm not pouring up to the top. This gives me plenty of wiggle room to mess around with, and we'll get to that. So now let me go ahead and cut these strips on the table saw, and we'll get back to this. All right, I've got my fence set up at 4 inches. I've got the depth of my blade set to where it just goes over the plywood. You barely want the blade sticking out of there. You don't want to stick it out too far, it can get dangerous. All right, so now we have our 4-inch strips for the sides going here and here. So what we're gonna do is measure how much we're gonna need. So, like I said, 22, be good. We're gonna take our board, mark 22. I think I can get 2 pieces out of this one, which is good. 22. We'll measure from the other side because you know the width of the blade is an 1/8 inch and you're gonna lose that if you're measuring, so don't just measure here and then measure 22 again. You'll end up with 2 different size boards. All right, those are marked. Let's go cut them. You know the trick. Put your pen on your mark, say like that right there. Slide the square to it, then you got it. Same thing here. On my mark, brought it to it. Yeah, that way you're not trying to line that up, like where is that, especially in this very horribly lit shop, trying to find the mark. Instead, find it like that, bring it to it, make your mark, you're good to go. And the more you know, the more you know. Also, it's good to remember which piece you're using and where your line is marked, because on that first piece, I had to cut on this side of the line, and on this piece, I need to cut from this side of the line. That's that 1/8 inch I was telling you about, the thickness of the blade. Cool. These are the ones we need. Let's wrap them up. There's one. Notice I didn't cover that. I could throw another piece of tape on there, but I'll just make sure that it is the bottom to this as we attach it, and then it's not an issue. All right, so now that we've got these 2 pieces all taped up, we are now going to attach them. We have our 1.5" Craig screws here, square head, and we're just gonna throw a few screws here on the side. Now you wanna make sure that this is lined up with this. Make sure it's nice and flush at this point here. Okay, and then continue down. Now you don't have to go like every 2 inches with a screw. You can go, you know, every 6 inches or so, or you know, space it out. There we go. Nice and flush here at the end. You want to go where you don't really see daylight right through here. You know, try to pull it in as tight as possible. But we're going to caulk that all in, and we'll get to that in a minute. So like a little bit of a gap is not a big issue, but you know, try to do the best you can, keeping it tight. Let's measure this end. Now, I stayed flush on both sides-ish, flush-ish on each side. I'm just going to take my tape, measure the distance. I got 18 inches, you know, 3/4, 1.5 inches. This is 16. There you go. So I'm gonna make my pieces. I'm gonna cut them, you know, 19. They can be a little bit long, hanging off the side. You don't want anything crazy. I mean, you can if you want, but I don't like living that dangerously. So we're just gonna go a little bit over the edge. We need 2 pieces at 18 inches, so there's 1. There's 2. Not gonna use, not gonna use. Gonna put a little mark there so you can identify once you cut it which piece you're actually tossing out. I like to throw a little X on there. Works for me. All right, let's screw in our end pieces here. All right, now we got these in, but now we want to at least throw one in here, if not both. Now, if you're doing a table, do both. If you're something larger scale than a charcuterie board, you might want to add just a few extra screws in there. I don't know, like the weight and everything else. You don't want it to leak or fall apart, because you know how expensive that can be. So I'm just going to throw one in up here. Holds that nice and tight. Same thing on this end. I'll just throw one right up here. Hold that in nice and tight right there. Now the other side. So you have that gap right here. So you want to throw that screw in there, eliminate that gap. All right, so here's our box, here's our wood. We're just gonna put it in and see, right there. I'm gonna have to shave just a little bit off, so I'm glad I didn't cram it in there and pop some screws loose or any that mess up the caulk. I'll check the other piece as well. Yeah, so I'm going to go trim blades width off of both of these pieces. I'll be right back. All right, let's try that again. Look at that. Beautiful fits. There we go. There's our pieces inside here. We know that they're gonna fit. We know that this is gonna work. So let's go ahead and apply some caulk to this. You really don't need to use that much caulk, just enough to keep it sealed. Like I said, a nice thin bead. Fill in any gaps, any holes. Gonna go all the way around. And the reason we do it this way is so you can reuse these forms, because once we do our pour and it's all said and done, we take this apart, we don't have to throw any of this away. We can reuse it over and over again. With that said, reusing it over and over again means you're gonna end up with screw holes in some odd places. Sometimes these will get flipped around. You see where I have the screws here? You go to remake another form, the screw holes might be up on top. So these are all new, we don't have that problem, but when you're using it, just rule of thumb, just look there and see if there's any holes that are gonna need any caulk. And fill those in. It just saves you a headache in the long run. So now I'm just going to push all of this into place and fill in the thin spots. Fill it in with a little excess that you create on your finger when you're doing it this way. So I feel like there is a nice bead all the way around. They're good and clean. We're gonna let that set up and dry. We're gonna set it off to the side. In the meantime, I'll show you a couple other little things. Sometimes you're gonna come across pieces that you wanna pour that are larger than the forms that you already have. So you can go in with a pocket hole, Craig, pocket hole jig. They do make a smaller one you can get, which this one you just clamp to your piece like so, and then you drill in there and all that, so you don't need the big apparatus, but we do it on a larger scale, so we need a larger setup. It's pretty basic. So say you have a piece, you need to extend this out like another 5-6 inches, and so you need to attach these two pieces together. What you want to do is get this, set it to your depth, make sure your drill's all set. We can get into that later about how these things actually work, but if you have one, you know. You go in, clamps to the piece, take your drill, like so. Now you got your nice little pocket hole. Do it a few more times. Okay, there you go. Now, what you're gonna wanna do is see where these holes are, line up your piece that you're going to use to extend it out further. Make a little mark so you know you're gonna need a hole in between these. So, you know, one here, one here, one here. We'll take our piece. This is where you're just gonna line this up the correct way. Find out where your line is. Roughly about right there. So now, you have these nice holes here that your Craigs will go into. Like I said, we'll show you how to use the whole apparatus in another video, but now these are ready to connect. Now what I like to do in between these, run just a little bead of caulk in there just to help seal the deal. We are going to tape over it, but it does help. So now these are going to squeeze together. We got 1 1/4 here. What we're going to do is go in. Okay, now your board is long enough for you to work with. Now just throw some tape, you know, over your piece, like so, right over your seam. cut it. And so now this is ready to go, but what's gonna happen is you're gonna need to make side pieces too. So with these, it's not long enough. And whenever you put these together, make sure your seams aren't in the same spot. That creates a weak point. So I'm gonna bring this over to here, flush. I'm gonna do my extended piece over on this side where there's no seam, no weak point. Now these gonna go together same way that the base itself went together. Same thing, 2 pocket holes, 1 pocket hole, a little bit of caulk, screw them together, throw some tape on it, and attach to the sides. You got your box, and that can be used in large pieces, small pieces, all of them. So there's that little tidbit. So now let's tape up these blocks. Pretty basic, pretty simple. We're gonna do this, just wrap it around. Make sure all sides are covered. You don't have to be super clean with this. I mean, you can, doesn't hurt to be, but everything just kind of folds over, sticks to itself. You know, anytime you get spares, just make up a bunch of these. You know, have them up. I have a basket I keep off to the side in each room that I do pours in, and they're just always there when I need them. Everything is dry in here. We went ahead and waited overnight. You don't have to. I wouldn't say put your pieces in right after you caulk it, but you know, the longer you can give it time to dry, the better, safer, the less chances of a leak. Now, the blocks that I told you about, this is how we're gonna use them. I'm gonna put one in each corner, and we're gonna take our clamps here and clamp it down like so. Now you don't have to go super tight with these. There is going to be some shrinkage and heat, some stuff going on. Basically, we're just trying to hold these in place so they don't shift on us or float away. So, you know, they're good. Now, at this point, you're gonna wanna check, make sure everything's level. You're gonna do your equation to get the amount of epoxy that you're gonna need. We already did that, so we know. And then we're gonna go ahead and pour this. We personally sell a bunch of colors. We've got these mica powders in, little sparkly. I think we've got somewhere around 84 different colors, actually, you can choose from. So if you want to order from us, there's a link somewhere on here that you can click and go to that. We also do epoxy. Now, for all the equations on ratios and quantity, that's gonna be another video. This is basically showing you how to make the forms and how you can reuse them over and over again. For now, let's go ahead and play around with this stuff. I've got some color shifting mica powders that's actually gonna be pretty cool. And let me know in the comments if you do think it's cool. 2-to-1 ratio. That's pretty neat, right? It's color shifting. I don't know if that's shifting for you. It's like purple and green. Pretty cool. You can stir this using a drill, which is much faster, and probably make sure all the pigments get broken up, all the powder inside there. Don't get little chunks. Now this is mica powder, obviously, but there's other ways you can color your epoxy. There's alcohol dyes. There's a solid color dyes that you can use if you want something more like translucent. You want to shine some light through. The alcohol dyes are pretty good. Now you could actually do that with the powder, mica powder as well. You would just use less, so you'd still be kind of translucent. Now you can take a clear cup, which I don't have, and you can test out your colors and see how translucent and how solid that it is. Me, I just went all out, just dumped this whole bag in here, and hopefully it turns out well. We'll do a whole video on epoxies and the ratios, colors, what can go wrong. Like for example, it's nice and warm here in the shop. I'm actually gonna keep this out here. You'll get a lot more movement in the pigments when it's warm for a charcuterie board. If you're doing a deep pour and something big like a river table, you wanna make sure that room stays nice and cool and keep a fan blowing on it to blow that residual, that heat that's generating from the chemical reaction of these two bad boys. It gets hot, and I can show you an example. We have a table that exploded on us, and it was in the air conditioning room, but we didn't turn the fans on, and I'll show you right now. what that looks like. This is what happens when the fans aren't turned on. We had this happen once before. The AC actually froze up on this room and it destroyed the piece. But if you can see here, this is what happens. It's here. I mean, this whole table ruined. But now we're gonna go back in, we'll cut all this out and we'll fix it. But it's an expensive mistake. So I can hopefully help try to keep you from making that mistake. Now, when you do have a proper fan blowing in here, like as you can see here, we just have a simple box fan, little filter on the back side. That'll help keep from blowing dust and stuff all over your piece. But this is what a great pour looks like in a nice cool room. You get all this cool figuring in here, which is just great. No cracks, as you can see. This one's gonna hold together. Now we're just gonna wait for this to dry and we'll finish it up and get it out the door. So it's a big difference between, you know, using a fan and not using a fan. This room's cooled, but not cool enough. Unless you've got some expensive chilling table or whatever, get a fan. Just use one. Save you a lot of money. So look at that. Damn near perfect amount of epoxy. Now it's going to overflow. You see this? What's happening here? We're getting some epoxy on these blocks. That's why we wrapped them in tape. Once this stuff hardens, and don't worry about if epoxy gets, you know, on your board. You don't have to get it perfectly in there. I mean, yeah, waste not, want not, but this will all, we're gonna run this through a drum sander and this will all get flattened out. So any kind of epoxy that's on here will get taken away. So that's pretty cool. But you'll see towards the end of this video why we wrap these things up and how easy it is to take them off when you do. So you can use a torch if you'd like, or a heat gun. You can use that as well, which we have both here. I prefer, for this anyways, is some Bust-A-Bubble. This stuff's pretty cool. If you want to see how it works, watch this. Check this out. Pretty neat, I must say. And you just want to go back and check on this every once in a while for your bubbles, make sure everything's cool. You can make swirly little patterns all you want. It's going to do its own thing. Unless you happen to catch it right before it flashes off, any kind of little cool, you know, pattern or swirly thing. There you go. Now, as you can see, our piece is finally cured and we're ready to take it out of the box. You'll see that they are pretty hard. They're stuck in there. These ones, as you can see, just popped right out. There wasn't too much epoxy around them. But with these, it's a simple tap and they're clean, reusable. So making these is it's gonna help you out a lot in the future. And then another one will just pop free. And there you go. No epoxy left on it. I mean, if there is, no big deal, but nice clean piece ready to be reused over and over. So now let's go ahead and pop this thing out of the form. All right, so all the screws are out. Now is basically just tap the sides off. Now, as you can see with that tape on there, peels off nice and clean. And then these are reusable. Set them off to the side. Now, if you're doing charcuterie boards, you got an average size, you're not gonna have to cut these or make new side pieces for a while. They can be reused over and over again. But just like that, they pop off. Board's nice and clean. We'll set this off to the side for a second. Now with this, it's a matter of cleaning the caulk off that we applied earlier. Nice, clean, ready to go. Now we could just instantly slap these sides right back on there, put another bead of caulk in, and it's ready to pour over and over again. But like I said, watch out for the little holes that you've already used. You can reuse them, the same hole over and over again, and it's gonna wear out. So you're gonna wanna adjust where your screws go over time. But other than that, as long as the plywood holds up, you should be able to get good 10 plus boards out of this if they're taken care of properly. So with all that said, good luck with your projects. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something out of this. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. The bells and stuff, they're somewhere here on your screen. I'm not quite sure. It's great working with you guys today. See you next time. Oh, you're gonna get footage of me throwing stuff. Always throwing things.
Or you see someone that you know and they ask you how you are, and you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
I never realized how much I throw stuff until it was video footage proof of me doing it. All right, I'm back now. Got that all cleared up.